The topic of this thesis is immigration to Italy from the 70s to the present day, and the figure of the linguistic and cultural mediator. I have decided to deal with this topic because it is highly topical, and we witness it on a daily basis, as it is present in all areas of our society. Nevertheless, very often, various aspects of this phenomenon are unknown, and therefore, a large part of the native-born citizens perceives it as a source of problems and not of opportunities. In fact, my objective is to show that the presence of immigrants is mostly a positive fact. It should not be considered as a reality that must be fought against, a situation that only generates constant conflicts and makes it impossible to establish a peaceful coexistence characterized by mutual benefit, but rather as a situation that can improve conditions of both parties involved, if only they committed themselves to facilitating it. In fact, their presence enables a cultural, linguistic, and religious exchange, and in this way, a personal and collective enrichment in various ways, and a greater openness of future generations. This is demonstrated by data and figures from reliable sources, and by studies conducted with the aim of disclosing information that is unknown to the majority of citizens, and which can sometimes be the main cause of anti-immigration attitudes. In my opinion, it is right for any industrialized country with favorable socioeconomic conditions to provide assistance and help to those who are fleeing from their lands due to conflicts and epidemics and would not survive if they were not accepted. In particular, this thesis is divided into 4 chapters. The first one focuses on the history of immigration to Italy, its evolution, the causes that led entire populations to migrate, which allow us to understand the reasons for the emergence and rise of this phenomenon, and the laws that have regulated it in the past and in recent years, which often, unfortunately, have proved inadequate. In the second chapter, the main characteristics of the migrant reception system in force in Italy are mentioned, which includes the first and second reception centers. The third chapter examines the link between migration and crime, the link between migration and terrorism, and then it continues with a comparison between Italy and some EU member states from the political asylum process viewpoint. Finally, the fourth chapter is dedicated to the linguistic and cultural mediator profession, a leading figure in communication and understanding between native-born citizens and foreigners, which can help to find common ground between the two parties involved. By focusing a chapter on this figure, I have tried to show how much relevant this profession is, even though there are still no laws exclusively dedicated to this line of work that give it its proper importance. In fact, we could say that, without its function, the complex situation of immigration would be even worse, since it would be much more difficult to establish relations of mutual acceptance between the different populations and to make their needs be understood. Migration is defined as the permanent or temporary movement of groups of people to another area of their country or to another country, for several reasons, and it is a worldwide phenomenon, although the places of departure and destination have changed over time. Italy has considerably transformed since the end of the 19th century, considering that, initially, it was a country from which migrants left, and then it gradually became one of the lands of destination. The turnaround of the migration flow that occurred in the Italian peninsula, in which the number of immigrants began to exceed that of emigrants, was a consequence of the close connection between the interruption of immigration flows on the one hand, the start of waves of repatriation of Italian emigrants, and the arrival of the labor force from the northern African countries on the other hand. As we have already said, nowadays, migrants are often victims of racist attacks and abuses, and the generalizations the native-born citizens make about immigrants are a consequence of the fear deriving from the news of crimes committed by them and of the ignorance of the real situation. This leads local populations to oppose foreigners. Since in the current historical moment migratory flows have accelerated in speed and scale, it has become increasingly necessary to set objectives that focus on the respect for human beings and the community. Therefore, it is essential to be open to other cultures and races, and consider integration and the fight against social exclusion and inequality as fundamental conditions. Ultimately, we should all try to put ourselves in the shoes of immigrants and try to understand their needs, also thanks to the work of the linguistic and cultural mediator. All this may also be facilitated by enacting new laws on immigration that enable the government to manage the phenomenon better than now, guaranteeing immigrants integration and security, and at the same time reassuring and encouraging the host populations to welcome them in their territories.